Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Cosmos channel. Tonight we ask a question that sounds like it should keep you awake. What are the most terrifying places hiding in the universe? And then we let that question answer itself into something closer to comfort. Because real fear needs closeness, needs your skin in it somehow. And every place I am about to show you is impossibly far away. Sealed behind a distance, the way glass seals off a storm you can admire, but never once feel on your face. Think of tonight as a long hallway in a museum after hours, lights turned low. Every howling, violent, impossible place in the universe, framed and hung behind glass, for you to drift past at your own unhurried pace. Footsteps softened by carpet, nothing able to reach through any frame and touch you. We have 4 rooms to wander through tonight, and you do not need to hold on to a single one of them. First, the near wing, where we look at the storm worlds of our own solar system, the churning giants, the small burning rock too close to its sun, but always from here, from the hush of Earth's own night, arm's length and safe. Then the far rooms, where we drift out past our sun entirely to visit hostile worlds around other stars and watch, from a great and tender remove, the luminous way old stars come undone. After that, the dark gallery, where black holes and the folded hearts of galaxies wait behind their own glass, patient and unmoving, doing nothing more than bending light the way a held breath bends a room. And last, the quiet wing, the emptiest room of all, the great voids, the lone wanderers drifting without a star to call their own, and the improbable tender fact that anything as small as an eye ever learned to see any of this at all. 4 rooms, 4 unhurried unspoolings of one long thread. You do not need to carry a single one of them tonight. That is my work, not yours. If this hallway is a place you find yourself wanting to return to, a like or a subscribe helps the channel find its way to someone else who is also lying awake right now, staring at a ceiling, looking for a low voice to walk beside them in the dark. No pressure in it at all. Just a small kindness passed along. There is nothing here tonight that needs anything from you. No test, no task, no thread to keep track of. Let your shoulders ease down into whatever is holding you, the mattress, the pillow, the chair beneath you. Let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes close if they haven't already, and if they're still open, let them go heavy, unfocused, half shut like a door at the end of a long day. Settle in. The hallway is warm and empty, and it is only ours tonight. Let's begin. So let the evening finish settling around you, the way it always does. The room dim, the blanket heavy in that particular way that means the day has finally let go of your shoulders. Somewhere past the window, the sky is doing what it does every night without asking anyone's permission, turning slowly overhead, indifferent and enormous, and, for tonight, entirely yours to wander through. You are warm. You are horizontal. You are exactly nowhere near anything that could ever touch you. Hold on to that fact, because it is the only fact that matters for what comes next. Here is the strange little riddle we're going to sit inside tonight, turning it over the way you might turn a smooth stone in your palm before sleep. The universe is, by any honest measure, a violent place. It boils, and it freezes, and it tears itself apart. Somewhere out there, a cloud of gas hotter than any furnace ever built is collapsing on itself. Somewhere a wind is blowing faster than any hurricane that has ever been given a name. Somewhere a star is folding inward with a force that would flatten anything we know how to build. Say the word terrifying, or even the word dangerous, and the universe has an answer waiting, usually several, usually stranger and larger than whatever you first imagined. Whole planets scorched past any temperature we have a household word for. Winds that could strip paint from a starship. Explosions bright enough to outshine every other star in their galaxy combined, for weeks at a time, before dimming again as if nothing had happened at all. And yet, and this is the whole of the riddle, the part that lets your breathing slow rather than quicken. Every single one of those places is so far away, that far barely means what it usually means anymore. Not far like the next town. Not far like the other side of the ocean. Not even far like the moon, which astronauts have actually stood on and walked away from. Far like light itself, the fastest thing there is, needs years, centuries, sometimes whole ages of human history just to cross the gap between there and here. Far like your bed is safe, tonight and every night, and always will be, because the distance between here and there is not a small gap that could someday close if you waited long enough. It is not a door that's merely shut. It is the actual shape of safety itself, built into the size of the universe, the way walls are built into a house. So think of tonight's journey as a walk through a gallery. Not a museum of dry facts under fluorescent light, but something older and quieter than that. A long hall that stretches out past the reach of any building, past the reach of any city, lit low, the air still, your footsteps making no sound at all because you are not really walking, you are only drifting, carried from one room to the next the way a leaf is carried by water that has already decided where it's going. And in this gallery, each terrifying place the universe has ever built hangs on the wall like a painting. A boiling planet. A storm the size of a world. A star finishing its life in a single, silent flash, brighter than 100 billion ordinary days. Each one framed, each one behind glass. And the glass, this is the part I want you to keep. The one thread we'll follow all night long, returning to it every time the pictures get large or strange or almost too bright to look at directly. The glass is not really glass at all. It is distance. Light years and millions of kilometers and whole galaxies of near-perfect emptiness, all of it pressed flat into something as thin and clear as a window pane, so that you can stand as close as you like to something monstrous and feel nothing but the cool hush of looking. That is the trick tonight. That is the whole, entire trick. Nothing behind any frame in this gallery can step out of it. Nothing can reach past the glass, ever, no matter how large it grows or how fiercely it burns. You get to look at the most violent things the universe has ever built, and because you can never actually touch them, and they can never, under any circumstance, touch you, all that violence quietly turns into something else entirely on its way to you. It arrives, by the time it reaches your bed, as wonder. Only wonder, plain and clean. That is what fear does when you hand it enough distance. It loses its teeth at the edges, it stops being a thing to run from, and it becomes, instead, a thing to simply watch, the way a child might watch a storm from a warm room, rain streaking a window that everyone in the house already knows cannot break. We'll wander through 4 wings tonight, though you don't need to remember the order, only to trust that there is one, that someone has already hung every picture and turned on every low light, and all you have to do is drift. The first wing is close to home, almost embarrassingly close, planets in our own small neighborhood, worlds spinning near enough that sunlight takes only minutes to cross the space between us and them. The second wing opens further out into rooms where storms grow larger than entire planets, swirling in the deep cold beyond Mars, patient and endless. The kind of weather that has been raging since before there were eyes anywhere to see it. The third wing is the strangest. A long corridor of frames showing other suns entirely. Other planets we have only ever seen as the faintest flicker. Worlds so far that their portraits are painted not in ordinary light, but in shadow, in the tiny, patient dimming they cause when they pass in front of their own star. And the last wing, the deepest one, the one we'll reach only once you're good and drowsy, holds the biggest frames of all, stars finishing their lives, the strange dense embers they leave behind, and the dark doorways at the very back of the hall where even light goes in and never comes back out. 4 wings. One long, unhurried walk, with nowhere you need to be and nothing waiting for you at the end of it, except more quiet. No rush at all, because the gallery never closes, and neither, really, does the night. But every gallery has a first painting, the one nearest the entrance, the one your eye finds before you've even decided to look for it. And ours is close enough that you've probably already met it, more evenings than you could count, without ever knowing you were looking at a frame at all. Step outside on almost any clear evening, right after the sun has gone down and the sky is still holding on to the last of its color, and low in the west there's a single point of light brighter than every star around it, steady, unblinking, refusing to twinkle the way the true stars do. The kind of light that looks less like a star and more like a lantern someone left burning just for you, hung low enough to almost reach. That's the one. That's our first frame, waiting near the very entrance of the gallery, close enough to touch with a glance. Venus. It has a lovely name for a lovely light, named long ago by people lying on their backs in fields with no idea what it actually was, for the planet that seemed the most serene thing in the whole sky, the most beautiful of the wanderers, rising before the sun in the morning or settling after it in the evening like a small, dependable promise. And from here, held safely behind all that distance, it earns the name completely. No argument, no fine print. It is, honestly, one of the most restful sights available to the naked eye anywhere on Earth. Brighter than every star in the sky and outshone only by the sun and the moon themselves, a warm, unhurried glow that has guided sailors home and told farmers when to plant and kept sleepless children company against 1,000 different windowsills for as long as there have been eyes here to look up and wonder what it was. But step just a little closer in the gallery, not physically, of course, never physically, only in the way this walk lets you lean toward a frame to study it, and the painting changes completely. Because behind that lantern light is a world that, if you could somehow stand on it, would be trying to kill you in at least 4 or 5 different ways before you'd even finished being surprised by the first one. And that's exactly where we're headed next, past the safety of the lamplight and into the frame itself, to look closely, but always, always, from behind the glass at what is actually happening on the surface of the brightest, calmest looking, most secretly furious little world in our entire sky. And so the first frame is already waiting for you, hung close to the entrance, close enough that you have seen it 1,000 times without ever stepping inside. You know this one. You have watched it hang low in the west after sunset, or burn above the horizon before the sky has finished turning dark. So steady and so bright that for centuries people mistook it for 2 different stars, an evening one and a morning one, never guessing they were the same single point of light circling back and forth around the sun. That point of light is Venus. And tonight, behind its pane of glass, you are allowed to see what it actually is. Venus is, by every honest measurement, the most hostile world you could stand on in this solar system. Not Mercury. Closer as it is to the sun's furnace, Venus beats it, and beats it by a wide margin. The surface of Venus holds a temperature of about 465 degrees Celsius, day and night, pole and equator, with almost no variation at all, because there is nowhere for the heat to escape to. Mercury, without an atmosphere to hold anything in, actually cools down dramatically each night, dropping hundreds of degrees the moment its sun sets. Venus never cools. Venus cannot cool. Its thick blanket of carbon dioxide traps the sun's warmth so completely that the planet has become, in effect, one long unbroken furnace day that has lasted for hundreds of millions of years and will go on lasting for hundreds of millions more. Lead would puddle and run across those rocks like water finding the low places in a field. Tin would do the same. And above that furnace floor, the sky itself presses down with a hand 2 times heavier than the air resting on your shoulders right now. A hand about as heavy as the water pressure you would feel almost a kilometer beneath the surface of an ocean here on Earth, where the light no longer reaches, where the water itself takes on a strange, heavy blackness, and every human vessel that dives that far must be built like a bell of solid steel just to keep its shape against the weight pressing in from every side. Higher still, where you might expect relief, there is none. Venus wears its own weather like a second, cooler atmosphere layered on top of the first, clouds made not of water but of sulfuric acid, drifting in decks that circle the whole planet in only 4 Earth days, driven by winds that howl far faster than anything at the surface below them ever feels. It is a world running 2 separate storms at once, one skimming the clouds at tremendous speed, one holding utterly motionless and crushed at the ground, and between them a planet that spins so unhurried on its own axis that a single Venusian day, one full turn, sunrise to sunrise, takes longer than its entire year around the sun. Imagine that, waking and growing old, and the sun still has not managed to complete even one crossing of that sky. A world where the day outlasts the year. A world locked into a greenhouse of its own making, run away with itself, past any hope of a returning cool evening. Scientists have a plain name for what happened to Venus, and it is worth holding for a moment, because it is really a story about a door that never got the chance to close. Long ago, by some accounts, Venus may have carried oceans of its own, water enough to have looked, from a passing distance, almost like home. But it sits nearer the sun than we do, warm enough that those oceans gradually lifted into vapor, and vapor itself traps heat, so the warming fed itself, and fed itself again, each small rise in temperature lifting a little more moisture, each rise in moisture trapping a little more warmth, until the oceans were gone entirely and only the trapping gas remained, thickened now into the crushing carbon dioxide sky that seals the planet today. A runaway is the right word for it. Not a single storm, but a process that outran any chance of balance. A door propped further and further open until it could never again be pulled shut. It is a patient, unhurried kind of catastrophe, one that took eons rather than moments, and it finished its work long before anything on Earth had grown eyes to watch it happen. And here is where the frame changes for you, because none of that heat, none of that acid, none of that impossibly lingering day can touch you where you are lying. Venus sits, on average, about 40 million kilometers from Earth at its very closest, a distance so large that light itself, the fastest thing that exists, needs more than 2 minutes to cross it, and at its far side, on the opposite curve of its orbit, That gap swells to well over 150 million kilometers, a gulf the mind can name but never truly picture. 40 million kilometers of cold, silent, welcoming vacuum is the glass in this first frame of the gallery, and it is a very thick glass indeed. Even a robot built to withstand it, sturdy, round-hulled, armored in titanium, has never lasted more than about 2 hours on that surface before the heat and the crushing air found their way in and silenced its instruments for good. If a machine built by patient engineers for exactly that purpose cannot outlast an afternoon down there, you can trust that nothing about that world's crushing sky, its acid clouds, its 4-century warmth without a single cool hour, has any way of reaching through that much distance to find you tonight. The storm is real. The frame around it is just as real and just as solid. What is left, once the glass has done its quiet work, is only the picture. And the picture, seen from here, is almost tender. Step outside on a clear evening and find that steady point low in the west, and you will notice it does not flicker the restless way stars do. Starlight trembles a little as it passes through miles of moving air. Venus's light is broader, closer, reflected sunlight off a whole planet's worth of cloud, and so it glows instead with a smooth, unwavering light. The brightest thing in the sky apart from the moon, easy to find, easy to return to, night after night, season after season, waxing and dimming through its own unhurried phases the way the moon does, if you ever watch it through a lens. Ancient watchers gave it names for a herald, a guide, a lamp lit at the threshold between day and dark, and set it into their earliest calendars as a marker of returning seasons. They were not wrong to love it. From this distance, the second hottest surface in the solar system becomes one of the most serene objects visible to the naked eye. No violence in it at all. Only a dependable glow marking the edge of evening, the same glow that will still be hanging there tonight, in your own sky, however far you have wandered through the rest of this gallery. That is the strange gift distance gives us. The same world can be a furnace and a nightlight at once. And which one it is to you depends only on how much glass stands between you and it. Every fact you just heard about the heat, the pressure, the acid, the lingering, unhurried day remains completely true on the other side of that glass, and none of it changes the low, tranquil light resting on the horizon outside your own window. Leave that frame now and let yourself drift outward, past it, the way starlight itself drifts outward, unhurried, in no rush to arrive anywhere. Past Mercury and Venus, already behind you, their heat already sealed back behind their own glass. Past Earth, small and blue and turning, and the moon keeping its familiar quiet orbit around it. Past Mars, rust-red and small and, for all its old reputation as a war god's namesake, actually one of the gentler worlds you will pass tonight. Thin air, cold deserts, dust that rises in pale storms and settles again, with nothing like the fury waiting further out. Canyons and old dry riverbeds lying patient under a sky the color of faded rust. Let Mars slide by the way a smaller painting slides by on your way to a larger hall, its frame narrow, its colors muted. Nothing behind its glass that asks you to linger tonight. Beyond it, past the rocky worlds altogether, past the wide gap of drifting rubble and ancient stone that separates the small planets from the large ones, the gallery opens into rooms built on a different scale entirely. Rooms hung not with planets you could ever stand on, but with planets so vast that a storm living inside their skies could swallow whole worlds like this one without even noticing. it had done so. The walls of these rooms are wider, the frames are taller, and the light falling through them turns pale gold and pale blue instead of the warm evening color you have just left behind. That is where you are walking now, outward through the widening dark, into the wing where the frames grow larger and the weather inside them grows larger still. Leave that little lamp behind you now, still burning its patient gold in the evening sky, and let your walking carry you further down the gallery, past the rust-red dust of Mars, which tonight is only a doorway you pass without pausing, a threshold between the small stone worlds and the giants waiting beyond them. The frames grow larger here. The glass grows thicker, and what hangs inside each one is not fire this time, but wind. Wind on a scale that makes the word itself feel too small. Wind that has been blowing since before your great-great-grandparents were born. Wind that will likely still be blowing long after you and everyone you love has lived a full, unhurried life and returned to the earth. You do not need to fear any of it. You only need to look. The first frame in this new room belongs to Jupiter, and at its center turns a single vast eye of storm, the color of a dried rose, a swirling oval of cloud that has been given, over the centuries, the plain and almost gentle name of the Great Red Spot. Picture it honestly, because the honesty is part of what makes it beautiful rather than alarming. This is a cyclone wide enough to swallow the entire Earth and still have room left along its edges. A hurricane with no coastline to weaken it, no mountain range to break its rhythm, no ocean to eventually cool its engine and let it die. It has spun, by the best guess of the patient people who have watched it through lenses for hundreds of years. Since long before anyone alive today was born, some who kept early records believe they may have glimpsed its edges as far back as the 1600s, and it was certainly there, turning, when your great-grandparents' great-grandparents looked up at an unfamiliar night. And yet notice what it actually is, once you strip away the size and let the picture settle, a slow, self-contained weather pattern, painted in bands of ammonia ice and hidden chemistry, held aloft in an atmosphere, with no solid ground beneath it for the storm to ever touch down upon. It rages, and it rages in a place with nothing to hurt. It is a storm with no shore. Frame it that way in your mind, and it stops being a monster and becomes what it has always actually been, an old painting, its colors mixed from cloud instead of oil, hanging in a gallery so far from your window that even light, moving as fast as anything can move, needs the better part of an hour just to cross the distance between that spinning eye and your own quiet eye, half closed now, looking up. Notice, too, how the frame itself does the work of keeping you safe long before distance even enters into it. This whole storm rides on a planet made almost entirely of gas, a world with a swirling, layered atmosphere, but no hard crust anywhere beneath it for weather to grind against, no rock for it to erode, no shoreline for it to erase. Down and down, the clouds simply thicken into deeper cloud, then into something closer to liquid, then into pressures so strange that scientists still argue over what to even call the world at that depth. The storm has nothing beneath it to wound. It is violence with nothing to be violent toward, which is another way of saying it is only ever really weather, magnificent and self-contained. The largest brushstroke in the whole gallery and utterly harmless from where you are lying now. Drift past it, the way starlight drifts, unhurried and asking nothing of you, and let the next frame come into view. Saturn, wearing its rings like a wide, low brim of hat, and at the very top of its head, at the North Pole, where a planet's weather usually swirls into a simple circle, something stranger waits. A hexagon, 6 long, straight-edged sides of jet stream, wrapping around the pole in a shape you would expect to find drawn with a ruler on paper, not blown into being by gas and rotation on a world 95 times the mass of Earth. Spacecraft have watched it for decades now, and in all that watching, it has not wandered. It has not softened into a circle the way clouds so often do. It holds its 6 corners with an almost eerie patience, wide enough that 4 Earths could be set inside it side by side, each corner rounding only slightly, the whole shape turning once every 10 hours or so like a great slow clock face laid flat against the pole. And here is where the fear, if any tried to gather, simply has nowhere to attach itself. A hexagon is not an aggressive shape. There is nothing about 6 long, calm sides holding their place for years at a time that reads as violence, even though the winds inside those walls move fast enough to be called extreme by any measure we'd use down here. It reads, instead, almost like a piece of geometry someone hung deliberately in this room of the gallery, proof that even in the coldest, windiest halls of the solar system, there can be order, a shape that keeps its promise season after season, spinning steadily above the rings the way a lighthouse keeps its beam steady above a dark and harmless sea. Beneath the hexagon, deeper in the cloud deck, other storms come and go the way small weather does on Earth, brief pale specks against the gold. But the hexagon itself outlasts them all, unmoved, unbothered, a single steady frame around a slow and patient turning. One more door in this near wing, and it opens onto the coldest room of all, Neptune. That last deep blue giant, so far from the sun that its noon is barely brighter than our twilight, so far that its year lasts 165 of ours, meaning that since it was first found hiding in the dark by careful mathematics rather than by eye, it has only just now completed a single one of its own slow circuits. And yet inside its pale, frozen-looking clouds blow the fastest winds anyone has ever measured anywhere in this solar system. Gusts clocked near 2,000 kilometers an hour, faster than sound itself travels through our air. Fast enough that the word supersonic, usually reserved for engineered things, for jets and shockwaves, belongs here instead to weather. Let that sit for a moment, because it is genuinely strange. The coldest of the giant worlds, farthest from the sun's warmth, somehow holds the wildest winds of all its siblings, as if the chill itself had nothing to do with softness, as if speed and warmth had simply never agreed to travel together out there. And still, notice the frame around it. Those supersonic winds move through an atmosphere of hydrogen and helium and traces of methane. The very methane that gives Neptune its deep, ink blue color, bending sunlight the way your eyes bend a lullaby into something you can drift on. Faint clouds of frozen methane drift like high, thin cirrus above the fastest gale in the solar system, catching what little sun there is and glowing pale against the blue. There is no ground down there for a 2,000-kilometer wind to tear at. No town, no tree, no door for it to rattle. It simply blows forever around a smooth blue sphere 4 billion kilometers from the window you are lying beside right now, a distance so vast that the sunlight reaching those winds left the sun over 4 hours before it arrives, faint and thin, like a whisper that has traveled all night just to reach a single pane of glass, and by the time any word of that far-off wind could reach you here, telling you how fast it blew today, you would already have slept through seasons of it, safe and unbothered. The whole vast storm no louder to you than a picture on a wall. Step back now, for a moment, and let your eyes take in the whole near wing at once. 3 frames, 3 impossible weathers, each one painted in its own light. Rose red ammonia on Jupiter, pale steady geometry on Saturn, deep supersonic blue on Neptune. Each one enormous enough to be called violent by any word we might reach for, and each one, without exception, entirely and permanently contained, held inside gas, inside distance, inside glass so thick that not one gust of any of those winds has ever so much as stirred the curtain in your room. These are only the paintings of our own small neighborhood, the storms that happen to belong to the same sun that warms your afternoons, hanging just a little farther down the same gallery hall where Venus's golden lamp still glows behind you. But the gallery, as it turns out, does not end with our neighborhood. It goes on. Somewhere ahead of you, a doorway is opening onto a wing you have not walked yet. A wing hung with frames from around other suns entirely, other fires, other skies. Weather so strange it barely uses the same words as ours, waiting quietly, patiently, behind glass that is measured not in millions of kilometers now, but in light years. And beyond that near wing, beyond the ammonia paintings of our own giants, the gallery does not end. It opens. A doorway you did not notice until you were standing in it leads out past the last planet of our own sun, out into a hall so long that its far end is lost in darkness. And here the frames on the wall are not worlds we have visited even in miniature, by spacecraft or probe, but worlds we have only ever glimpsed as a flicker, a shadow crossing a distant fire. You walk in, and the first frame catches the eye before it catches the mind, because it is blue. Not the blue of an ocean, not the blue of your own sky, but a deep, saturated cobalt, the color of a marble held up to a lamp. This is a place called HD 189733b, and if you could stand at a safe remove and watch it turn, you would think, for a moment, that you were looking at a twin of home. You would be wrong, and the glass would be grateful for it. That blue is not water. It is glass itself, or something very like it, fine particles of silicate suspended so high in a scalding atmosphere that they scatter blue light the way our own sky scatters it. An accident of physics dressing up a furnace in the color of a calm morning. Beneath that borrowed blue, the temperature climbs past 1,000 degrees, and the winds do something that no weather on any porch, in any field, in any place you have ever stood, has ever done. They blow sideways at 7,000 kilometers an hour, fast enough to cross a country the size of a continent before your next slow breath finishes. And the leading thought, the one the astronomers arrived at almost gently, almost as an afterthought, is that under conditions like these, those high fine particles may fall. Not as rain the way you have known rain, cool and welcome on a window, but as rain made of glass, blown nearly flat by winds too fast to let anything drop straight down. It is, on paper, one of the strangest weathers ever inferred anywhere. And it is 64 light years away. Sit with that number for a moment, because it is doing quiet work here. 64 light years means that the light now reaching a telescope aimed at that little blue point left it before you were born, before your parents were born, in some cases before your grandparents were born, and it has been traveling, patient and unaccompanied, ever since, carrying the only evidence of that glass storm across a gulf so wide that even calling it a distance feels almost too small a word. That is how far behind glass this particular frame hangs. You could not visit it in a lifetime, in 10 lifetimes, in the time it took every civilization on Earth to rise and fall. It exists for you tonight only as a very old letter, finally delivered. Further along the same hall, the light dims, then flares, then dims again, and you come to a frame that seems at first to be simply gold, restless and shifting, the way a coal shifts in a hearth. This is WASP 76b, and to understand it, you have to understand that it does not turn the way your own world turns, offering every face in patient rotation to its sun. It is locked, one side always toward its star, one side always away, so that it lives its entire existence in a permanent noon on one hemisphere and a permanent midnight on the other. The two halves never trading places, never taking turns, forever fixed in their roles like the two sides of a coin that never flips. On the noon side, the heat is not merely tropical, not merely fierce. It is enough, astronomers found, to vaporize iron. Not melt it, vaporize it, lift it clean into the sky as a gas, the way steam lifts from a kettle, except the kettle here is a planet and the steam is metal. And then the wind, that same tireless wind that seems to define every frame in this hall, carries that iron vapor across the boundary between day and night into the permanent dark on the far side, where the temperature falls enough, just enough, for the iron to condense again and fall. Iron rain, on the night side of a world that never sees its own sunrise. It is a detail almost too strange to hold on to, and yet there it is, read patiently out of starlight, by instruments built by hands not so different from yours. Hands that once just wanted to know what a distant world was made of, and found, instead, weather with no precedent, whether this small blue and green home of ours was never built to produce. And it too is glass-bound, 640 light years of it, a distance so large that the very concept of visiting stops making sense, and the frame becomes, simply, something to look at, admired the way you might admire a painting of a place you will never walk into, and would not want to. Not every strange frame in this hall needs wind at all. Further still, past worlds where the storms are made of gas and glass and falling metal, there are worlds where the storm never stops, because the world itself has never finished melting. K2-141b is one of these, a place so close to its own star, orbiting so tightly and so fast that a year there passes in less than a single one of your days, and the heat this closeness brings does not merely warm the ground, it liquefies it. One whole hemisphere of that world is thought to be an ocean, but not of water, an ocean of molten rock, rippling and slow the way lava moves, glowing the deep orange red of a forge, stretching to a horizon that never cools. On the other side, the side that never faces the star, the temperature falls so far that rock itself is thought to condense from the sky as a kind of mineral snow, drifting down onto ground that has never once felt warmth. A world, in other words, cut cleanly into a hemisphere of fire and a hemisphere of frost, with no dusk between them to soften the change, no gentle in-between hour, the way you have twilight, only the hard, permanent edge where liquid stone meets stone too cold to melt. You do not need to feel the heat of that ocean to understand it. The astronomers who found it never felt it either. They read it in the smallest imaginable dimming of a star's light, a dip lasting hours, repeating with the same patient rhythm each orbit, a shadow so faint that finding it at all required decades of instruments growing steadily more careful, more sensitive, more willing to notice a whisper. That is the strange comfort tucked inside every frame in this whole distant hall. None of these worlds were ever seen directly, not as a globe, not as a shape with texture and color the way you might picture a place from a photograph. They are inferred, a star's light flickering by some fraction of a percent as a small, dark shape crosses in front of it, or the faintest shift in a spectrum as a planet's own dim glow adds itself, briefly, to its stars. That is the entire evidence. A dip, a flicker, a gentle catch in the breath of starlight, arriving here from dozens of light years away in the closer frames, hundreds in the farther ones, having crossed a distance, no ship, no signal. Nothing you could ever send or receive in an ordinary span of years could cross and answer back within your lifetime. The glass here is not metaphorical caution. It is literal physics, the plain fact of how far light must travel, and it means these worlds of glass rain and iron rain and molten oceans are, and will likely always remain, the safest kind of extreme, vivid, real, and permanently out of reach. There is something almost tender in how these far frames were hung at all. No spacecraft has ever slipped past HD 189733b to feel its winds firsthand. No lander has ever set a single instrument onto the molten hemisphere of K2 141b. No probe has skimmed the boundary between fire and iron rain on WASP 76b. Every fact you now carry about them arrived secondhand, filtered through nothing more dramatic than mathematics and long nights of watching. A curve on a graph, a color separated out of white starlight, and red like a fingerprint. A shadow timed to the second across years of repeated orbits. And so these frames, though they show the strangest weather known to exist anywhere, are also, in a way, the gentlest to hold, because holding them has never required going near them. You are allowed to find them beautiful, the same way you might find a photograph of a wildfire beautiful, from a hillside a valley away, close enough to see the color, far enough that the heat is only ever an idea. And it is worth noticing, standing here at the far end of this long hall of worlds, that every storm you have walked past tonight, the crushing heat of a nearby planet, the vast cyclones of the giants, this last stretch of frames bright with glass rain and falling iron and slow rivers of molten stone, is dressed in a violence that belongs only to weather, to the outer skin of a world turning patiently around its star. The star itself, in each of these paintings, has simply hung there in the frame's own sky, a small fierce point supplying heat and light, and doing, it would seem, nothing more dramatic than that. But that is only how it looks from this safe distance, through this thickness of glass. The stars are not simply lamps hung above these frames, steady and uninvolved. They have their own storms, deeper than any wind, happening within their own tremendous burning weight, hidden at first, and then, in time, they have their own endings so complete that they leave the whole gallery lit for weeks, visible across a galaxy, before quiet finally returns. And after the lava worlds, after the iron rain and the sideways glass, the gallery does something unexpected. It stops showing you weather and starts showing you endings. Because if planets can have storms, so can the stars that light them, and a star's storm is the grandest one hung anywhere in this whole long hallway of frames. Picture, if you will, a star many times heavier than our sun. One that has spent millions of years doing the same patient work, fusing light elements into heavier ones, holding its own enormous weight up against itself, layer after layer, like a hand pressed flat against a door that wants very badly to close. For most of a star's life, this is a fair fight. Outward pressure from the fire in its core, inward pressure from its own gravity, balanced so precisely that a star can burn for ages without much changing at all. But heavy stars run out of things to fuse. Eventually, the core fills with iron, and iron will not burn. It takes more energy to fuse than it gives back, and the moment that happens, the hand comes off the door. What follows is fast. Almost shockingly fast, if you only measure it by the millions of years that came before. The core, suddenly unsupported, collapses in on itself in a matter of seconds, not gradually, but in about the time it takes you to draw one long breath in and hold it. A region the size of a small planet crushes down to the size of a city, and then, because nature cannot compress something that far without consequence, everything rebounds outward in a shockwave of light and particles so overwhelming that for a few weeks, that single collapsing star can outshine every other star in its entire galaxy combined. Billions of suns, matched or exceeded by one. This is a supernova. It is, by any honest measure, the single most violent event that nature stages anywhere in its collection. And yet, notice what it is not. It is not an attack. It is not aimed at anything. A supernova has no appetite, no direction it prefers, no memory of the worlds it might one day touch. It is simply a physical inevitability, gravity finishing an argument that pressure had been winning for millions of years, and the light happens to travel outward in every direction at once, because that is what light does, not because it is reaching for you. It hangs here in our gallery exactly like everything else has, framed, distant, held behind glass so thick and so wide that not one photon of danger reaches the room where you are lying right now. You may look at it as long as you like. It cannot look back. There is a star you already know, in a sense, even if you've never thought of it as dangerous, because you've likely seen it without knowing its name, the reddish shoulder of the hunter, up in the winter sky, unmistakable once someone points it out. Betelgeuse. It is a star nearing the end of its own long balancing act, a red supergent so large that if you set it where our sun sits, its edge would reach out past the orbit of Mars, swallowing the space where several worlds now quietly turn. And it sits about 550 light-years away. When astronomers say Betelgeuse could go supernova, tonight, or in 100,000 years, nobody can say which, and both are equally likely from where we're standing, it is easy to hear that as ominous. It isn't. 550 light-years of distance is such an enormous cushion of glass that when Betelgeuse finally does let go, the show will simply be beautiful. Bright enough, for some weeks, to be seen even in daylight, a second faint sun keeping the winter sky company. No warmth reaching us, no light-speed shockwave finding a way around the glass. Nothing owed, and nothing risked. A lamp lit in the corner of the sky, and nothing more. Watched from a seat so safe it might as well be a porch swing, a blanket, a window left open a crack for the night air. Not every stellar drama waits for the final ending, either. Some stars throw fits along the way, dress rehearsals for the main event, and one of the grandest belongs to Eta Carinae, a colossal and unstable pair of stars, roughly 7,500 light-years off, tucked in the southern sky. In the 1840s, it briefly became one of the brightest stars visible from Earth, flaring for a handful of years before fading again, all the while shedding a vast twin-lobed cloud of gas and dust that we still watch expanding outward, frame by frame. Called the Homunculus Nebula, two glowing balloons of stardust caught mid-breath, pushing outward at millions of kilometers an hour and still, from here appearing to hang almost motionless, the way distant weather seems frozen against a summer sky. Eta Carinae has not exploded yet, not fully, but it is expected to, someday, in its own unhurried astronomical time, perhaps as a supernova, perhaps as something rarer and even brighter still. And when it does, The light will take 7,500 years just to reach us, arriving long, long after everyone alive tonight has become part of the ground itself, after the language we're speaking in has changed beyond recognition, after entire civilizations have risen where there is only open field tonight, which is, in its own way, rather comforting. The frame is that far back in the hall. Here is the part of the story that turns all of this from spectacle into something closer to tenderness, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. Breath slowing, eyes closing, because it changes how the word explosion ought to sound to you from now on. Before a star like this collapses, its core has already spent its whole life building things, fusing hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen, working steadily up the periodic table the way you might build something patiently out of small stackable blocks, one careful layer at a time. And then, in that final second of collapse and rebound, the star does something it could never do while calm and stable. The shockwave briefly reaches temperatures and pressures so extreme that it forges the heaviest elements of all, in one last furious burst of creation, flinging every bit of it, carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, calcium, gold, out into the surrounding dark. This is not incidental to the story. It is the whole point of it. Every calcium atom sitting quietly in your bones tonight, holding you upright, was forged in the heart of a star that lived and died long before our sun ever gathered itself out of the dust. Every iron atom carrying oxygen through your blood right now, as you lie there breathing in and out, came from the same kind of furnace, the same kind of collapse, the same kind of violent, generous ending. The oxygen filling your lungs on this very breath, the phosphorus written into every cell that has ever divided inside you, the trace of gold resting in a ring on a nightstand somewhere nearby, all of it traces back, if you follow the thread far enough, to a star that once burned brighter than its whole galaxy for the length of a few weeks, and then let everything go. You are, quite literally, wearing the aftermath of supernovae, not as scars, as gifts. The most violent event that nature is capable of staging is also, when you look closely enough, the most generous thing it does. An ending that scatters exactly what the next thing needs to begin. A star does not simply die. It gives itself away, in pieces small enough to become a heartbeat, small enough to become you. So let that sit in the frame for a moment. A star spends millions of years as a steady painting of light and pressure, then in one held breath becomes the brightest thing in its galaxy, then spends the rest of forever as scattered elements drifting through the dark, through the cold between galaxies, through clouds that will one day gather themselves into new stars and new worlds, some fraction of them eventually finding their way into planets, oceans, and the quiet architecture of a body very much like your own. Violence, and then generosity, and then you, lying here tonight, made partly of ancient fire that has long since gone out. It is one of the tenderest facts hidden inside one of the most dramatic frames in the whole gallery. But a star's final flash, however grand, is not quite the end of the exhibit. Because something is always left behind when the light fades, a core too dense and too stubborn to blow away with the rest, an ember that keeps its own strange, private kind of glow. And in the next room of the gallery, that is exactly where we drift to next, not to the explosion itself, but to what remains sitting quietly in the ash long after the brightness has gone, the small, unbelievably dense embers still waiting there in the dark, patient, folded impossibly tight, keeping a kind of time all their own, and what is left once a star has given away its light, does not vanish. It stays. It cools into something small and dense and strangely patient, and if you let your breathing settle into the rhythm of this next room, you will find it is the most orderly frame in the whole gallery. The one place tonight where chaos has folded itself down into a kind of music. Picture the core of that star we just watched come undone. The part that did not scatter outward into calcium and iron and starlight. Gravity takes what remains and presses it again, until every atom loses its old shape entirely, until electrons and protons are crushed together into neutrons packed so closely that a whole sun's worth of mass, 1 million Earths, roughly, ends up folded into a sphere you could walk across in an afternoon, no wider than a modest city. Hold that thought loosely, the way you'd hold a stone you know is heavier than it looks. A teaspoon of this material, just one small spoonful, would outweigh a mountain range, would outweigh every car ever built, would tip past 1 billion tons before the spoon even finished being a spoon in your mind. And yet here, safely behind the glass of thousands of light years, it is not a threat at all. It is simply the densest known object that still keeps its shape, sitting in its frame the way a pearl sits in velvet, catalogued, labeled, admired from a courteous distance. Consider, too, how such a thing came to spin at all. A star, before its collapse, turns lazily on its axis, across weeks or months, the way a planet turns across a day. But when its core folds down from something the size of a sun to something the size of a city, it must keep spinning at the same total rate, the same law that lets a skater draw her arms in and suddenly whirl faster applies here on the grandest scale imaginable. So the newborn ember, having lost almost all its width, inherits all of its old motion packed into almost none of its old space, and it begins to turn at a pace that would have been unthinkable for the star it used to be. This is not fury. It is simply arithmetic, unhurried and exact. The universe balancing its books the only way it knows how, and the result of that balancing is the very rhythm that will soon carry you through this room. Some of these embers are stranger still. Astronomers call them magnetars, and they carry magnetic fields more powerful than anything else known to exist. Fields so intense that, were one to drift absurdly close, which none ever will, it could in principle rearrange the very atoms of a nearby object. But notice the shape of that sentence, were one to drift close, which none ever will. That is the whole point of tonight's gallery. The frame holds the storm exactly as it should. A magnetar many thousands of light years away is not reaching for you across that distance any more than a painting reaches out of its frame to touch the person admiring it. It sits, it hums with its own private intensity, invisible, wrapped in fields we can only measure as a flicker of X-rays crossing the room to greet our instruments centuries after they left. And every century's old flicker is proof of how completely the distance has already done its work of keeping you safe. Only a handful of these magnetars are known across our entire galaxy. Rare even among rare things, and each one keeps to itself, tucked into some far, unremarkable corner of the Milky Way's spiral arms, quietly outshining every magnet ever built on Earth by a margin too large for the numbers to mean very much anymore. And then there are the ones that turn. Pulsars, they're called, and the name itself is almost a lullaby if you let it be. A spinning neutron star, with a beam of radiation sweeping from its poles, the way a distant beacon sweeps its slow arc across a night harbor. As the star spins, sometimes many times each second, sometimes only once every few, that beam crosses our line of sight, and then leaves it, and then returns, over and over, with a regularity so exact that some pulsars keep time better than the finest clocks built by human hands. Picture that for a moment, an object born from the most violent collapse a star can undergo, now spending the rest of its long existence doing nothing more dramatic than turning, sweeping its low beam past us on schedule, like a lighthouse keeper who has kept the same unhurried rounds for 1,000 years and intends to keep them for 1,000 more. The universe took its most extreme material and taught it to keep a metronome's patience. There is something almost tender in that, if you sit with it, violence settling, eventually, into rhythm. The first of these was found almost by accident, decades ago now, by a young researcher combing through pages and pages of chart paper data, hunting for anything that looked like noise but wasn't. What she found instead was a signal ticking with such faithful, dependable regularity that for one brief, wondering moment the team considered whether it might be a message, a deliberate beacon left by some other patient mind out among the stars. It wasn't. It was simply a neutron star, turning, doing what neutron stars do, indifferent to being noticed at all. And yet the mistake was a forgivable one, because there is genuinely something in that ticking that resembles intention, an emberous heart, keeping its own private count, whether or not anyone out here is listening. Now we know of thousands of them scattered through the galaxy, each with its own tempo, some fast enough to spin many hundreds of times in a single second, others so unhurried they complete one slow rotation across the span of several ordinary heartbeats, and all of them, fast or slow, utterly framed, utterly harmless, simply turning in the dark for their own unknowable reasons. So let it settle here with you too. Let yourself go loose in the frame of this room, because for the next little while, there is nothing to do but drift. Imagine you are weightless, the way you sometimes feel in the last moment before sleep actually arrives. That faint lifting sensation where the mattress seems to fall away and you are simply held, cradled by nothing you can name. You are being carried now, slowly, past these framed embers, the way a boat is carried down a wide, unhurried river, past a shoreline it never needs to touch. You do not steer. You do not have to. The same distance that keeps each ember safely behind glass is the very thing that is carrying you past it, smooth and continuous, one long, uninterrupted drift through a gallery of quiet lighthouses. Below you or beside you, or in whatever direction feels most like down when you have let go of up entirely, a pulsar turns its beam and turns it again, and you watch the beam sweep by the way you might watch a paper lantern swing on a wire far above a courtyard, out of reach, harmless, lovely precisely because it asks nothing of you. Somewhere else in the frame, a magnetar sits in absolute silence, its enormous fields folded invisibly around it like a coat it never needs to remove, and you drift past that one too, close enough to notice it, nowhere near close enough for it to notice you. Nothing in this room requires your attention. Nothing requires your effort. You are simply being carried, and the carrying itself is the whole of your task tonight, to watch the beams turn, to feel the small computational hum of your thoughts finally quiet, to let the rhythm of far-off spinning stars stand in for the rhythm you might usually count in breaths. Consider, as you drift, how strange it is that the deadliest material known to science has become, from this distance, something almost domestic. A lighthouse only feels dangerous if you imagine yourself swimming toward the rocks beneath it. Watched from a warm room, through glass, from a chair pulled up to the window, a lighthouse is one of the most comforting sights along any coast, because its whole purpose is to mark where the danger is so that ships may steer around it, so that sailors far out on black water can find their bearings and know they are not lost. Pulsars do something similar for entire galaxies, though no one built them for the purpose. Their signals are so regular that some scientists have proposed using networks of them as a kind of cosmic timekeeping grid, a way for future spacecraft to navigate by counting the identical, dependable ticks of these fast-spinning embers, the way old sailors once counted stars. The most extreme objects the universe can make have become, unintentionally, its metronomes, keeping time in the dark for anyone patient enough to listen. Let that be the last thought before the frame changes, even here, at what should be the most fearsome edge of the gallery. Matter has settled into pattern, into pulse, into something closer to breathing than to violence. You keep drifting. The river of this dream does not hurry you, and there is no far shore waiting to be reached tonight. Only more gallery, more glass, more distance holding everything exactly where it belongs. And as the beams of the last pulsar fade slowly behind you, swept away like a light passed on the highway at night, you notice the room ahead growing darker rather than brighter, the walls losing their glow of X-ray and radio hush, until what waits in the next frame is not a burning ember at all, but something with no light of its own to show you. A room, up ahead in the unhurried dark, where the paintings on the wall have nothing visible inside them. And still you drift, carried past the last of the glowing embers, their beams turning behind you like the pages of a book closing one at a time. And the light around you begins to thin. The gallery does not end here. It only grows darker, the way a museum might dim its rooms toward the far end of a wing, saving its most hushed exhibits for last. You are still being carried, held by nothing more demanding than the current that has carried you this whole way. Nothing asks anything of you. The frames simply change, one after another, and the next ones hold nothing you can see at all. This is where the dark gallery opens, and it begins the way so many of tonight's rooms have begun, with a star, and with time. Somewhere, long before you were born, a star far larger than our sun burned through everything it had to give, and when there was nothing left to hold it up against its own weight, it did what massive things do when no one is left to catch them. It fell inward. Not violently, from where you stand. From here it is only a shape closing upon itself, a held breath that never lets go. It fell past every point where falling usually stops, past the density of a neutron star, past anything matter has a name for, until it reached a place where the only thing left to describe is the emptiness it wears like a coat, and the boundary drawn around that emptiness by gravity alone. That boundary is called an event horizon, and of everything hung in this gallery tonight, it may be the quietest frame in the whole museum. It is not a wall. It is not a surface you could touch, or a mist you could part with your hand. There is nothing there to bump into, nothing solid, nothing that announces itself. It is simply a line, the last line along which light can still turn around and come back to tell you where it has been, one step closer, and light itself, the fastest thing there is, the thing every other frame tonight has depended on to reach your eyes at all, can no longer find its way out. Not because something reaches out and grabs it, only because the space itself has curved so far around that every direction, even the direction that used to mean away, now leads further in. Picture a picture frame with no canvas inside it at all, only the frame, only the edge, holding a darkness that keeps its own counsel and asks nothing of the room around it. Near that edge, something else happens. Something almost too strange to be frightening. So instead, let it simply be wondrous. Time itself begins to lean. If you could watch a clock fall slowly toward that line, and you never will, you are safe here. This is only the gallery's way of showing you the shape of the idea. Its hands would seem to you to move slower and slower, its tick stretching longer and longer, as though it were reluctant to leave a single unhurried moment behind. This is not a trick of the eyes. Gravity this strong bends time the way it bends light, the way a heavy object bends a stretched sheet beneath it, and the closer you draw to that line, the more time itself seems to pool and settle, patient, unwilling to rush toward the edge. Space bends too, and this is the part astronomers sometimes call by a playful name, though there is nothing playful demanded of you in hearing it. Gravity near an object this dense does not pull evenly. It pulls harder on whatever is nearer, and softer on whatever is farther, so that anything falling toward it is drawn long in one direction and pressed narrow in another. The way pulling patiently at both ends of a strand of something soft draws it thin as it lengthens, the way a single ribbon of light might stretch itself gently around a curve in the road. Astronomers call this tidal stretching, the same word used for the ordinary tides that lift and lower an ocean back on Earth. Only here the difference in pull is steep enough to matter across the length of a falling object, rather than across the length of a whole planet. It is a strange geometry, but it is only geometry, shape, not hunger, and it belongs to frames so far away, so thoroughly sealed behind their glass of distance that they can only ever be watched, never felt. And this is the part worth carrying with you. The truest thing in this whole dark room, none of it reaches for you. A black hole does not hunt. It does not chase, does not lunge, does not so much as glance toward anything outside its own frame. From any respectful distance, its pull on the space around it is no different from the sun's pull on the Earth, or the Earth's pull on the moon, an old, familiar kind of gravity. The same gravity that keeps your own feet on the floor tonight, only wearing, at its center, a much smaller and much heavier coat. Planets do not fall into the sun. Moons do not fall into their planets. And stars and gas and light itself do not fall into a black hole unless they are already impossibly close, already inside a boundary drawn tight around that single point. Everything else simply keeps its distance and keeps its orbit, circling, unbothered, the way it always has. A black hole waits. It has always only waited. Whatever gathers near it does so on its own long, unhurried path, the same way anything gathers near anything heavy enough to notice. There is one of these quiet frames at the very center of our own galaxy, hanging in a room we could, if we wished, walk toward for the rest of our lives, and still not reach. It is called Sagittarius A, and it holds, folded into a point smaller than our solar system, something like 4 million times the mass of our sun. Around it, whole stars trace wide, patient loops, the way planets loop a sun, some swinging close enough to complete an orbit in only a handful of years before swinging safely back out again. Astronomers have watched a handful of these stars for decades now, tracking each pass the way you might track a favorite constellation, returning to the same corner of a familiar window. And every one of them has done this, again and again, without incident, for longer than there have been eyes on Earth to wonder about it. Our own sun, and our own small planet, and this very room where you are lying now, all belong to that same vast, calm orbit, circling the galaxy's center once every 200 and some million years, unhurried beyond any human measure of unhurried, entirely undisturbed. We are, in this sense, already orbiting a black hole tonight, the way a leaf might orbit a drain it will never reach, held in a slow, wide circle by something that has never once had to reach back. 26,000 light years of glass stand between this room and that one, glass thick enough that even light, crossing at its full and only speed, needs 26,000 years to travel the length of it. Whatever waits at the center stays at the center. It has a great many stars to keep it patient company, and none of them, not one, has ever needed to worry. So let the frame stay dark. Let it hang there in the gallery, unlit, unlabeled by anything you need fear. Simply a shape drawn in gravity, a line that keeps its own secrets, a center that the whole bright turning wheel of our galaxy quietly keeps its distance from, and always will. It asks nothing. It takes nothing that does not already belong to it. It only sits, patient as stone, at the middle of everything we call home, and around it the galaxy goes on shining, the way it always has, the way it will for longer than anyone needs to worry about. Every visitor to this room leaves with the same small comfort. An object that could hold 4 million suns has never once reached beyond its own frame, and it never will. Because reaching was never something a shape like this could do. And this dark room, it turns out, is not the last of its kind, nor even close to the largest. Sagittarius A is heavy beyond anything you or I could picture, and still, somewhere deeper in the gallery, in frames stretched wider than 100,000 light years across, there are others so much larger that their shadow alone can outshine every star in the galaxies that hold them. Frames so vast and so bright at their edges that they do not merely sit quietly in the dark. Some of them light their entire galaxy from the inside, a single small room somehow illuminating the whole museum around it. And it is toward those far larger frames that the gallery now, gently, begins to lead you. Sagittarius A was already the largest single object you have met tonight. 4 million suns folded into one dark point. And yet here, in the widest wing of the gallery, it turns out to be one of the smaller frames on the wall. The corridor opens, and the paintings along it are hung on a scale that stops being personal and becomes almost geological. The way a mountain range is geological, something you can stand before without needing to hold its full weight, because none of it was ever asking to be held. Let your shoulders sink a little further into the mattress as the ceiling of the gallery seems to rise, the walls stepping back to make room for frames too large for any single room to hold comfortably. And yet, here they are, hung and labeled and utterly harmless, the way even the largest painting in a museum is, in the end, only paint on a canvas behind rope. The first frame in this wing is the one humanity actually managed to photograph. In the heart of the galaxy M87, 55 million light years away, sits a black hole with a mass of some 6.5 billion suns, 1,600 times heavier than our own galaxy's dark heart. In April of 2019, a network of radio telescopes spread across the whole planet, from the high desert of Chile to the ice at the South Pole, worked together as a single instrument the size of Earth itself, and they caught its shadow, a ring of glowing gas curved around a circle of true dark. The first true portrait of the thing itself, rather than an artist's guess. It is worth pausing on how strange and lovely that is, a picture, framed and hung, of an object we will never visit, taken by patient eyes here at home. You can hold that photograph in your mind the way you would hold any photograph on a gallery wall, at arm's length, admired, entirely separate from you. 55 million years is long enough that the light beginning its journey toward that telescope array left M87 before there were mountains you would recognize on this planet, before there was almost anything at all that could have been frightened by it. And it has been traveling, patient and unbothered, ever since, arriving only now, only as a picture, only as proof that something so large can remain perfectly, permanently, out of reach. Further along, the frames grow heavier yet. TON 618 holds, by some estimates, a mass equivalent to 66 billion suns, a number so large it stops behaving like a number and starts behaving more like a fact about scale itself, the way very far stops meaning anything specific after enough zeros. If Sagittarius A is a coal folded into the hearth of home, TON 618 is closer to an entire hearth folded into a coal, one that could swallow our solar system out past many times the orbit of Neptune and barely notice the meal. It sits some 10 billion light years from the bed you are lying in, which means the light arriving from it tonight left before Earth had finished cooling into rock, before there was a you, or a bed, or a night to lie awake in. 10 billion years is most of the age of the universe itself. The glass on this particular frame is so thick, so deep, that it is less a pain than an entire ocean of time standing between you and it, and nothing, not one photon, not one whisper of gravity, arrives from it any faster than that ocean allows. That is not a frightening thought so much as a comforting arithmetic. It took that long, that much glass, for anything of it to reach us at all. And what reaches us now is only light, weightless and harmless. A smudge on a telescope's plate, a rumor of something rather than the thing itself. And some of these black holes are not painted in silence. Many of the largest ones are actively feeding, gathering gas and dust and the occasional unlucky star into wide spinning disks that heat as they fall, glowing brighter than everything else in their galaxy combined. We call these active frames quasars, and they are, without exaggeration, among the most luminous single objects the universe has ever produced. A single quasar's disk can outshine 1 trillion suns, can outblaze an entire galaxy of 100 billion stars, the way one lit window can outblaze a whole dark street if you stand close enough, except here, nobody stands close. We see these disks from billions of light years away, from so far back in time that when their light first left home, the universe itself was young, only just arranging its earliest galaxies into the shapes we would later learn to name, long before this solar system had condensed out of its own cloud of dust. A quasar's light can cross most of the observable universe to reach a telescope on a rooftop or a desert plateau, and by the time it lands, whatever fed that disk may have long since quieted, or changed, or simply moved on to some other shape entirely. We are not watching an event so much as reading its echo. Looking at a quasar through a telescope is a little like opening a very old letter. The light is real. The event was real. But the fire itself finished burning down long, long ago. What reaches your eye tonight is only the envelope. It would be easy, standing before frames like these, to feel the old kind of smallness, the kind that used to keep you up as a child, the sense of being a speck with no say in anything. But that is not the feeling this gallery is built to give you. Consider it differently. To be small in a universe built at this scale is not a diminishment. It is a kind of shelter. A black hole 66 billion times heavier than our sun has no attention left over for one warm body curled under a blanket on a rock, orbiting an unremarkable star in an unremarkable arm of an ordinary galaxy. It does not know you exist. It never will. Nothing this large has any use for you, any claim on you, any need from you at all, and that is precisely what makes you safe inside it. You are not being watched by any of this. You are not being weighed by any of this. The very vastness that seems, at first glance, like a threat is in practice the most forgiving kind of cover, because size this total simply has nowhere to put its attention on something your shape. Being small here means being overlooked, and being overlooked tonight is its own kind of rest. You are allowed to close your eyes precisely because nothing out there is waiting for you to keep them open. Think of the whole span of it for a moment, the way you might take in an entire wing of a museum before walking on. A photograph of a black hole's shadow across 55 million light years. A number attached to TON 617, so large it becomes wallpaper rather than a warning. A trillion suns worth of light leaving a disk before your planet had settled into its current shape, arriving now only as a faint, ancient signature on glass. Each of these paintings is enormous, and each of them is finished, sealed behind its own particular distance, none of them reaching past the frame, none of them needing anything from the room they hang in. You can walk this wing the way you would walk the largest hall in any museum, unhurried, hands loosely at your sides, aware that scale this size was never built to be carried, only looked at. And there is something almost tender in that the biggest, brightest, most extravagant rooms in the whole gallery turn out to be the ones that ask the least of you. The quasar does not need your fear. The distant giant does not need your attention. They simply are, at a scale too large for any of it to be personal, which frees you, oddly, to feel something closer to fondness than dread. A trillion suns worth of light, and none of it is a demand. Only a fact, hanging on a wall you happen to be passing, patient in a way nothing your size could ever manage. So let the brightest rooms dim now, the way a museum lowers its lights gallery by gallery near closing, the great luminous frames sinking back into a low gold hush and then into shadow, their glow trailing you a little way down the corridor before it lets you go. Ahead, past the last of the great feeding discs, past the last folded mass of impossible suns, the gallery does something it has not done all night. It starts to empty out. The walls space further apart. The frames grow fewer, then rarer, then almost absent altogether, as if the museum itself were exhaling. You walk on, past the dimming light of everything enormous, toward a wing built not from brightness at all, but from the long rooms where next to nothing happens, where, for the first time tonight, the gallery itself seems to be settling in to rest beside you, and even those brightest rooms dim as you keep walking, the way a bedroom lamp fades from the corner of your eye once you turn toward the window. The gallery does not end with its loudest paintings. It ends, instead, in a wing built almost entirely of walls with nothing hung on them, and it is here, of all places, that your steps naturally begin to slow. Not because there is more to see, but because there is finally so little to look at that your whole body can rest into the looking. You have been carried past storms and furnaces and hearts too heavy to name, and now the floor beneath you widens into a long, dim hallway, and the hallway keeps opening and asks nothing of you but to keep drifting through it. Somewhere past the last quasar's afterglow lies a region astronomers call the Boat's Void, a near-empty sphere of space roughly 330 million light-years across. To hold that number, the way your body can actually hold it. If our galaxy were the size of a coin resting in your palm, this sphere would swallow a room. And you could walk from one end of that room to the other for longer than you could imagine walking, and still find nothing much waiting for you. Where a patch of sky that size should hold tens of thousands of galaxies, strung and clustered the way porch lights gather along a distant shoreline on a clear night, the boat's void holds only a few dozen, scattered so thinly that any traveler inside it, standing on some lone world at its center, might look up at a sky utterly free of neighbors, might not even know, without instruments far gentler than an eye, that a wider universe existed at all. Astronomers first noticed this hollow while mapping the distances to thousands of galaxies, one careful measurement at a time, plotting each as a single point of light on a chart of the sky, and found at the chart's heart a great blank patch where the pencil simply had nothing left to mark, a hush in the data itself. No one built this emptiness on purpose. Gravity, over unhurried billions of years, gathered matter into filaments and clusters elsewhere and simply left this one region alone, a canvas the universe never got around to painting, or perhaps never needed to. The boat's void is only the largest and best known of many such hollows scattered through the cosmos, smaller pockets of near nothing tucked between the great gathered clusters, each one a room the size of a galaxy cluster or more, standing almost bare. Even our own local group of galaxies, the modest cluster the Milky Way calls home, sits near the edge of one such thinning, a region astronomers have simply named the local void, tens of millions of light years of comparative hush pressing gently against our own neighborhood's far side. You are not so far, then, from a version of this same stillness. A little further out along the thread than your own galaxy already stands at the edge of a room like this one, close enough to feel its quiet without ever needing to cross into it. Drift a little further and you pass through frames holding something even stranger than empty space, whole worlds with no star at all. Rogue planets, astronomers now suspect, may number in the billions across our galaxy alone, perhaps even outnumbering the stars themselves, each one flung loose long ago from the gravity of the very system that made it, nudged free by a sibling planet's pull or a passing star's tug, and sent tumbling on into the dark with no sun to orbit and no day to mark the passing of anything. Picture one now, not as a lost thing, but as a traveler who has simply stopped keeping anyone else's schedule, no sunrise pulling it awake, no year counting down toward any anniversary, just an unhurried, patient drift through starlight too distant and too faint to warm it, lit only, if at all, by the last low heat left over from its own birth, or by the pale glow of ice across its frozen surface. There is no crash coming for it. There is no edge to reach, no wall to meet. It only travels, and travels for longer than any clock we own could measure, and the glass between it and you is not fear, only distance, the same wide distance that lets you watch it drift on without ever needing to worry for it. The space between everything, star and void and rogue world alike, keeps its own steady temperature, and that temperature is cold, only a few degrees above absolute zero. The faint leftover glow of the universe's own first light, unbroken and crossing every gap after nearly 14 billion years of unhurried travel. Scientists call it the cosmic microwave background, but you can think of it more simply as an old, low warmth, the last dying note of a much louder beginning, humming everywhere at once, in every direction you could ever choose to face. This is not the cold of a winter night that bites and then passes. It is the resting temperature of the cosmos itself, even and unchanging across billions of light years, a held breath that has never once needed to be released. You do not feel it, out here in your own warm room. Nothing out here needs warming. It simply is, everywhere, evenly, the low and constant floor beneath every frame in tonight's gallery, the temperature the universe settles into whenever nothing else is asking anything of it. And if you could see all of it at once, every void and every rogue world and every filament of galaxies strung loosely between them, you would see what astronomers call the cosmic web. Threads of matter, spun out by gravity over billions of patient years, with galaxies gathered like beads of dew along their length, clustered where the threads cross and thin where they don't. And between those threads, vast unlit silences where almost nothing waits to be found. It is tempting, after a night like this one, to think of the universe as full, crowded with wonders shoulder to shoulder, because that is what tonight's gallery has shown you so far, frame after framed frame, storm after storm. But step back far enough from any single painting, and you find that most of the museum is simply hallway, wide, dim, uncrowded, room enough to walk for a long, long while without needing to stop and look at anything at all. The thread that has run through the whole cosmic web is, in the end, the very same thread that has run through tonight, distance, holding everything gently apart, letting each bright thing keep to its own quiet frame, letting the spaces between them stretch on, unbothered, for eons. Follow any one filament of that web far enough, and you notice something else. It thins before it ends, tapering into the dark the way a path through tall grass fades once no one has walked it in a while, until at last there is only the faint suggestion of where galaxies might have gathered had gravity had more time, or more matter, to work with. Cosmologists map this whole structure the way a cartographer might chart the coastline of a country made almost entirely of coastline, more edge than land, more hallway than room. And it is worth remembering, drifting past it now, that this vast and airy architecture took its unhurried shape over nearly the full age of the universe, a single slow arrangement, even now settling, filament by filament, into place. Nothing about it was rushed, nothing about it needed to be. This, then, is the most restful room in the whole gallery. Not because it is dull, but because nothing here is asking to be watched. No storm turns, no core collapses, no light bends around some hidden waiting mass. For hundreds of millions of years at a stretch, across a volume larger than your mind could ever hold in one single thought, essentially nothing happens here, and it happens on purpose, or at least it happens the way rest happens, not as the absence of a life that should have been there, but as its own complete and unhurried thing, whole, exactly as it is. You have spent the whole night walking past magnificence, past storms larger than worlds and hearts heavier than suns, and here, finally, is permission to walk past nothing at all, to let your eyes soften on an empty wall the way they soften on a dark ceiling, and to feel, for a while, exactly as unwatched and exactly as unhurried as the void itself, held by the same wide, careless kindness that holds everything else tonight. And lying here, this far into the gallery, this far into the night, a small and drowsy question drifts up on its own, the kind that only arrives right at the edge of sleep. How did creatures this small, on one warm and ordinary floor of rock, circling one unremarkable lamp of a star, ever come to measure a silence 330 million light-years wide? Or notice a single dark planet adrift somewhere out there with no sun to give it away? Someone had to look, and look carefully. Someone had to keep looking for a very long time, patient as the void itself, before any of these rooms could ever be hung with frames at all, before any of tonight's gallery could be found and known and tenderly, carefully named. That question can rest there a moment, unanswered, the way the void itself rests, because the answer is really the last room of the gallery, and it is the only one lit not by starlight, but by human patience. Every frame you have passed tonight, the acid-veiled lamp of Venus, the centuries-old cyclone on Jupiter, the cobalt rain of a world you will never visit, the folded ember of a neutron star, the dark line around a black hole that swallows nothing on purpose, every one of them was hung on its wall by someone who stayed up late, watching, when it would have been so much easier to sleep. Tonight, you get to drift off precisely because, for 4 centuries, other people did not. It began small, almost absurdly small. A tube of glass and brass, no longer than your forearm, ground by hand in a quiet Italian workshop. Galileo lifted it toward Jupiter on an ordinary night and found that the giant planet was not alone. 4 faint points of light sat near it, and over the following evenings they moved, swinging from one side of Jupiter to the other like a slow pendulum traced in ink. Nothing had ever shown, so plainly, that other worlds could have their own small moons circling them the way our own moon circles us. It seems like such a gentle discovery to have shaken a whole way of thinking about the sky, but that is how most of tonight's frames first arrived, not as thunder, but as a faint point of light, patiently returned to, night after night, until a pattern revealed itself. The next trick the sky watchers learned was even stranger, and it is the one that lets us know, this very night, what a star or a planet is even made of without ever touching it. Light, it turns out, carries a signature. Pass a star's light through a prism, and it does not spread into a smooth, unbroken rainbow. It comes out scored with faint dark lines, like the fine grain in old wood, each line belonging to a particular element reaching up and taking a small bite out of that specific color. Hydrogen leaves one set of lines, iron another, sodium another still. Each is recognizable as a signature at the bottom of a letter. This is how we know, without a single spacecraft ever landing there, that a supernova scatters calcium and iron into the dark. It is how we read the puffed up, wind-stripped air of a planet passing in front of its star, dozens or hundreds of light years away, and find water, or sodium, or the ghost of an atmosphere being slowly carried off into space. The starlight was always saying these things. It simply took someone patient enough and quiet enough in their attention to learn how to listen. Some frames, though, would not give up their secrets from a distance no matter how carefully anyone listened, and for those, a very few machines had to be sent all the way to the wall itself. Venus was one such frame. Its cloud deck is so thick, so endlessly turning, that no telescope on Earth could ever see through it to the ground beneath. So engineers built landers meant not to explore, exactly, but simply to survive, squat, spherical, armored craft named for the planet itself, lowered on parachutes through cloud after cloud of that heavy, acid-laced air. On the surface, the pressure and the heat began working on each one immediately, the way a slow tide works on a sandcastle, and within roughly an hour, sometimes less, every one of them went silent. But before it did, each lander sent back its handful of images, a flat, rust-toned plain, sharp broken rock, a horizon lit by a strange, diffused, orange-tinted daylight filtering through that dense golden sky. Those photographs are still, to this day, the only pictures ever taken from the surface of another planet's ground in our solar system, besides our own and Mars. An hour of data, paid for with a machine that could never come home, so that we would know exactly what waits behind that particular pane of glass. Farther out, where no lander could ever survive the cold and the distance, the watching had to travel a different way, not staying to look, but simply passing through and looking back over its shoulder as it went. 2 small spacecraft left Earth in 1977, riding the rare alignment of the outer planets like a set of stepping stones laid once every 170 years, and one of them swung past Jupiter, then Saturn, then Uranus, then Neptune, gathering a fresh photograph at each approach before continuing on, forever, into the dark beyond. It was that spacecraft's cameras that first caught the full, churning detail of Jupiter's great storm, the delicate braided rings of Saturn seen up close for the first time, the tilted blue haze of Uranus, the deep, restless blue of Neptune with its own pale storm drifting across the cloud tops. No human eye has ever been that close to those worlds. A machine went instead, sent images home across hours of silent travel time, and then kept going, carrying a golden record of Earth's sounds out toward stars it will take tens of thousands of years to even approach. It is still out there tonight, farther from home than anything else we have ever built, still faintly listening for our voice on its radio, still faintly answering. Closer to home, 2 great eyes were built and lifted above our own blurring atmosphere entirely, so that starlight could reach a mirror without first having to swim through miles of moving air. One has spent more than 3 decades in that high, quiet orbit, staring long enough at single patches of seemingly empty sky to reveal them as fields thick with distant galaxies, each pinprick another island of 100 billion suns. Its successor rides even farther out, cooled to a hush near absolute zero, so that its own machinery will not fog the infrared light it is built to catch. And it is this instrument that can now sit patiently on a single distant sun and wait for a planet to cross in front of it, teasing out from the way that starlight faintly dims and subtly changes color, the presence of iron vapor, of scorched rock, of an atmosphere being peeled away by heat. Somewhere in an archive tonight sits the light of a planet you have already walked past in this gallery, held in a file, waiting for someone to read it. And then, only 10 years ago, we learned to feel a sound that has never once traveled as light. 2 black holes, spiraling slowly closer to each other for eons, finally met and merged in an instant so violent it briefly outshone every star in every galaxy in the observable universe combined, not in light, but in gravity itself, sending a ripple through the very shape of space that spread outward in every direction like a stone dropped in still water. That ripple crossed more than 1 billion light years, growing fainter and fainter until it passed through Earth and stretched 2 long tunnels of laser light buried in the desert by a distance thinner than the width of a proton. Instruments built to catch exactly that whisper caught it, translated it into a short rising chirp of sound, and for the first time, humanity did not merely see a black hole's frame, it heard 2 of them meet. And in 2019, the whole gallery's darkest room finally got its portrait. No single telescope on Earth is large enough to resolve something as small. From this distance, as the shadow a black hole casts against its own glowing disk of infalling gas. So instead of building one impossibly large telescope, astronomers linked together observatories on mountaintops and ice sheets scattered across the whole planet: Hawaii, Chile, Spain, Antarctica, Mexico, Arizona, and had them all watch the same target on the same nights, turning the entire spinning Earth itself into a single lens the width of a world. Days of recorded data, stored on hundreds of hard drives too heavy to transmit over any network and flown by airplane instead, were slowly, painstakingly combined by teams working through the night for months afterward. What emerged was a soft, glowing ring of orange light curved around a small, dark heart, the very edge of that quiet line light cannot cross, photographed at last, for the first time in the history of anyone looking up. None of these instruments were built out of fear. A telescope does not defend against a storm. It simply keeps its shutter open a little longer and asks to be shown one more faint thing in the dark. Every frame in tonight's gallery, however wide, however violent, however far, was met first with someone's curiosity, and then with someone's patience, and then with the long, quiet vigil of staying awake so that the rest of us would not have to. Somewhere tonight, in an observatory dome or a small quiet room lit only by a monitor's glow, someone is still doing exactly that on your behalf, watching one more faint point of light so it can be framed and hung and made safe to look at. And because they are watching, you do not have to. The gallery can begin gently to close. Tonight has been about the near wing, the storm worlds of our own small solar system, watched from the safety of Earth's own night, close enough to name and far enough to never once touch you. Tonight has been about the far rooms, the hostile light of distant exoplanets, and the luminous, unhurried way-old stars come undone, held always at the far end of the hallway, softened by distance into something closer to a lullaby than a warning. Tonight has been about the dark gallery, the black holes and the folded hearts of galaxies framed behind their own glass, doing nothing more than bending light the way a sleeping hand curls loosely around a blanket. And tonight has been about the quiet wing, the great voids and the lone wanderers and the improbable tenderness of an eye that learned, against every likelihood, to look up and actually see any of it at all. Every frame we passed tonight, every storm, every dying light, every dark and patient throat of a galaxy has been hanging exactly where it always hangs, doing exactly what it always does, whether or not anyone ever walks past to look. That is the whole secret of the hallway. It was never waiting for you. It simply is, the way a held breath simply is, the way a locked door behind glass simply is. You were only ever a visitor tonight, passing through with your hands in your pockets, under no obligation to understand any of it, to remember any of it, to do anything at all with what you saw. So none of this needs anything from you now. Not the storms on worlds too cold to name, not the stars unraveling their long light years from now, not the black holes holding their endless silent watch, not the wide dark rooms of empty space stretching between one galaxy and its neighbor. They will keep existing precisely as they are, precisely where they are, tomorrow and the night after and every night beyond your noticing, whether you are here to consider them or already gone under, dreaming of something entirely your own. The hallway does not close. It only waits, low-lit, patient, for whenever you next wander back through. If you would like to keep drifting, another quiet exploration is already waiting on the screen in front of you. You don't have to reach for anything, don't have to choose, don't have to decide a single thing. Just let it begin on its own, and let your body stay exactly where it has settled, heavy and unbothered, while some new voice quietly picks up the thread where I leave it. Here is one small, easy question to loosen into, not to answer. Of every framed room we wandered through tonight, which one would you have lingered longest in, if lingering cost you nothing at all? The storms, the dying stars, the dark folded hearts of galaxies, or the wide, wandering, empty rooms at the very end of the hallway? You don't need to know. You don't need to decide anything tonight. Let the question drift off the way breath drifts out through an open window, and let your body sink back down into whatever is holding you. Feel the weight of the blanket settling over you. Feel the mattress give beneath your back, your shoulders, the backs of your knees. Let your hands go loose and open. Let your breathing slow on its own, without you ever telling it to, the way a tide goes out without deciding to. The hallway of storms is dimming its lights now, one frame at a time, glass going dark, footsteps fading, and you are already halfway into a dream that has nothing at all to do with any of it. Sleep well.